Adolf Hitler bursts onto the stage of history, promising to change the fate of Germany. As soon as he takes power in 1933, Nazi propaganda proclaims a miracle. The country seems to rise from the ashes and recover its lost glory. The streets appear prosperous, but that shining image has a hidden price. While some sectors that support the regime enjoy economic benefits, others start being hunted down without mercy. Behind the illusion of a flourishing state advances a dictatorship that controls every corner of society. Schools cease to teach freely and are turned into centers of indoctrination, while fear of repression becomes the key tool to subdue anyone who dares to challenge the Führer. In reality, the entire national effort has a single ultimate purpose: preparing the population for war.
Wenn es dem internationalen Finanzjudentum in und außerhalb Europas gelingen sollte, die Völker noch einmal in einen Weltkrieg zu stürzen, dann wird das Ergebnis nicht die Bolschewisierung der Erde und damit der Sieg des Judentums sein, sondern die Vernichtung der jüdischen Rasse in Europa.
This is what life was like under the Nazi regime. In today's episode of War Documents, before the Second World War broke out, life inside Nazi Germany was marked by radical transformations in every aspect of society. Although today we remember it as a racist, totalitarian tyranny, a large part of the population supported it enthusiastically. The key to that support lay in one decisive factor: the economy.
For most Germans, these were good years, a time of growing prosperity. Hitler's Nazis had promised national revival, and they boasted enormous popular support.
Hitler skillfully managed to capitalize on popular anger against the Treaty of Versailles, the agreement that, after the First World War, blamed Germany for the conflict and punished it with humiliating sanctions. Germany lost more than 10% of its territory. Its army was reduced to only 100,000 men, recruiting new troops was forbidden, and most of its weapons were confiscated. As if that were not enough, an enormous fine was imposed, plunging the economy into misery.
And this bubbling enthusiasm, it was contagious. One woman turned to me, a perfect stranger, and said, "He is my mother and my father. He keeps me safe from all harm."
Germany in these years was gripped in a cult of the Führer, the leader. The Nazis urged Germans to put their differences aside, to rally behind Hitler.
Hitler knew how to turn that collective rage into political fuel. He took advantage of national humiliation and launched an irresistible promise: he would restore prosperity to the German people. And surprisingly, when he came to power, he actually delivered on what he had promised. On January 30th, 1933, he became Chancellor, and in the 6 years that followed, everyday life in Germany changed in a radical way. The regime obtained resources thanks to foreign loans and to the property stolen from the Jews. With that money, it pushed forward large infrastructure projects: highways, hospitals, schools. These works generated millions of jobs and made unemployment plummet.
I come to Germany convinced that the overwhelming majority of the people don't find the political system of the Third Reich unjust or harmful. On the contrary, I'm convinced that many millions of people are profiting from Hitler's victory. Above all, unemployed people and everyone whose life is filled with national pride. I'm convinced that the system has indeed taken away certain moral values from people, but in its place has brought material advantages.
But the regime was not satisfied with that. To win over the population, it offered credit, cut taxes, and opened the door to mass consumption. Citizens began to travel on vacation, bought domestically produced cars, and enjoyed technological innovations that seemed to come from another world, such as television. The German people celebrated each new achievement as a personal triumph. For millions, Hitler was not just a leader. He was the hero who had rescued the nation and was leading it into a new era of greatness. His figure was surrounded by an almost religious devotion. To reinforce that ideal, the government offered easy loans to newlyweds, which made the marriage rate soar, and women who gave birth to numerous children received medals and economic benefits. But there was a dark side to this story. Those who did not fit into the racial model imposed by Nazism would face a brutal reality.
After the seizure of power, the National Socialists are able to connect directly with the anti-Jewish attitude of many resort managements and hoteliers. In 1935, Jewish tourists are completely excluded from the beaches of the German North and Baltic Seas. A corresponding decree from the Reich Ministry of the Interior in July 1937 is thus superfluous.
The Nuremberg laws marked a turning point. Marriages between Aryans and Jews were forbidden, as well as those with any other group considered inferior. Only women classified as pure were encouraged to reproduce, while Jewish women, Roma women, women with disabilities, and others labeled as undesirable were subjected to forced sterilization. This was the core of a eugenics plan that sought to shape future generations. The Nazis dreamed of an Aryan race destined to dominate the world, and to achieve it, they tried to accelerate the reproduction of those who fit into their racial utopia, while eliminating those who had no place in it. One of the regime's most striking incentives was the prize system for German mothers. Every August 12th, on Hitler's mother's birthday, the Führer himself presented the so-called Cross of Honor. It was awarded in bronze to those who had more than 4 children, in silver to those who had more than 6, and in gold to those who gave birth to more than 8. And there was an even greater privilege. The 10th child of an Aryan woman would be sponsored by Hitler himself and had to be given the name Adolf. Many women felt proud of this recognition, but the reality concealed absolute control over motherhood. Sterilization was not the only mechanism of domination. The state promoted chastity before marriage and harshly punished adultery, especially among those who did not belong to the Aryan race. By contrast, women considered pure were sometimes sent to special facilities where they were compelled to have sexual relations with SS soldiers to guarantee pregnancies that would strengthen the nation. This was how the Nazi machine worked. A dictatorship disguised as economic well-being and nationalist pride, while imposing an iron grip on private life and destroying minorities. The most disturbing aspect is that, in those early years, a large part of the population looked the other way. Even citizens from neighboring countries such as Poland came to admire the apparent progress of the Reich and moved to German territory without imagining the real price of that system. Public acceptance of what was happening in Germany was reflected in every aspect of daily life. The female role was clearly summarized in a slogan that captured the Nazi vision: Kinder, Küche, Kirche, children, kitchen, and church. 3 words that summed up what the regime saw as the destiny of women. Women had to give children to the fatherland, take care of the home, and maintain a moral life under Christian values. In Hitler's view, they could not take part in politics or in the Nazi Party, and their presence in the workforce was considered inappropriate. Even professional women were pressured to leave their positions, which were to be filled by men. Their role, according to the regime, was to devote themselves exclusively to reproducing the Aryan race. Third Reich propaganda took these ideas even further, creating organizations intended to indoctrinate people from childhood. Young people were recruited to absorb National Socialist ideology and adapt to the roles imposed by the regime. In the case of girls' organizations, they were instructed in household tasks, loyalty as wives and mothers, and obedience to Nazi principles. Meanwhile, the famous Hitler Youth targeted boys. It was much more than a youth movement. It was a genuine factory of soldiers for the future. Behind the mask of recreational activities, children were physically trained, indoctrinated in racial concepts, and taught absolute obedience to the Führer. The vision was clear. Hitler did not think in years, he thought in centuries. His goal was to shape the coming generations in order to perpetuate the so-called 1,000-year Reich. What on the surface looked like a German version of the Boy Scouts soon became a direct gateway to military life. There, among games and patriotic slogans, the soldiers of the coming war were being forged.
The Germans adore military show. In Nazi Germany, everyone has a uniform. If it isn't the uniform of the Army, Navy or Air Force, it is that of the SA, SS or some party organization. Even the little boys and girls have been strutting about in the uniform of the Hitler Youth or the Union of German Girls.
In 1936, the Hitler Youth ceased to be optional and became a mandatory organization for all boys between 10 and 18 years old. But it was not the only place where the regime exercised its control. Schools also became true indoctrination centers where, before opening a single textbook, students were already surrounded by Nazi symbols. Banners with swastikas, portraits of Hitler, and the Reich flag flying in every courtyard shaped the school routine. Some subjects remained almost unchanged, such as mathematics or physics. Others, however, changed radically. In biology, teachers emphasized racial purity, exalting supposed Aryan superiority over the Jews. Girls were urged to choose their future husbands carefully, avoiding any undesired mixture. Physical training also occupied a central place. In 1934, the Nazis reinstated the exercise program that had been cancelled by the previous government. 3 classes per week designed not only to improve health, but also to instill discipline, leadership, and a military mindset. Every movement was intended to shape the character of future soldiers. Even geography was shaped by propaganda. Textbooks exalted the expansion of the Germanic tribes and the historic mission of Germany as a power destined to dominate Europe. While all this was happening, most of the population lived in a false sense of calm. Hitler was seen as an exemplary leader who had restored stability. However, that apparent peace contained the seeds of conflict. The propaganda machine worked perfectly, while millions enjoyed an increasingly prosperous life. A minority, Jews, Roma, and people with disabilities, faced the worst side of the dictatorship from the very first day. As expected, the main targets of this machinery of hatred were the Jews. They were not only racially discriminated against, but also singled out as responsible for all the misfortunes Germany had suffered. Propaganda turned them into scapegoats, feeding a hatred that ended in ferocious persecution. Anti-Semitism, however, did not begin with Nazism. For centuries in Europe, they had already been marginalized. The early church described them as agents of the devil and murderers of Christ. In the Middle Ages, they were forbidden to own land or have access to public office, and they were accused of everything, from causing plagues to carrying out rituals with children. Although these were baseless slanders, Hitler used them as a foundation to cement his project. Thus, the Jews came to be classified as an inferior race and the greatest enemy of the Third Reich. Their property was confiscated to finance the regime, and many fled for fear of what was to come. For ordinary Germans, on the other hand, Hitler presented himself as the savior who was defeating a relentless enemy, consolidating their blind devotion to the Führer. In this way, the path was cleared for one of the most atrocious crimes in history, the Holocaust. Millions of people were deported to concentration camps, subjected to inhuman conditions, forced labor, and starvation. Those who did not die, they were sent to the gas chambers. The darkest chapter of Nazi Germany had begun. But the Jews were not the only victims. Communists, trade unionists, political opponents, and anyone who questioned the regime met the same fate. Democratic institutions were swept away, while the Gestapo and the SS imposed terror through arbitrary arrests, torture, and murder. Even so, out on the streets of Germany, the illusion of well-being still reigned. Many people preferred to ignore the brutality of the regime, enjoying an apparent prosperity. Then, in 1939, the charade collapsed. The invasion of Poland made Hitler's true intentions unmistakably clear. The rearmament program had been a success. Germany now had a powerful army, and the Second World War was underway. What followed was the most devastating conflict in human history, with millions of dead and the collapse of the Third Reich. Germany was left destroyed, in ruins, and under foreign control. The Nazi dream had turned into a nightmare. And so we conclude this journey through everyday life in the Third Reich, a journey that reveals how an entire nation allowed itself to be seduced by the illusion of greatness. Thank you very much for staying with us until the end. We look forward to seeing you in our next video.